Welcome to the Howie Silbiger Show on the True Talk Radio Network. Get in on the conversation. Call 1-877-669-1292.
And welcome to the Howie Silbiger Show. We're here on the True Talk Radio Network. I am happy to be here with you. I know that you are happy to be here with me on this wonderful, snowy Sunday night. It is crazy outside in Montreal, but I'm happy to be here, and let's talk a little bit about what's going on. Let's have a conversation. If you want to get in on the conversation, you could always call in. Number call 1-877-669-1292. That's 1-877-669-1292 is the number to call to get in on the show. I just want to start off the show by saying, as a free Canadian, I will not boycott the US of A. I want the drug problem in our country addressed. I want the border secured against individuals that want to come in here and injure me and my brethren. And I want people who are here illegally deported. And I want an election right now. I would like an election immediately. So instead of hiding behind a prologued behind a prologued parliament, I think the Liberal government should call an election immediately. So I will not be boycotting any U.S. products. I will not be boycotting anything because I feel strongly and continue to feel strongly that the U.S. is our strongest ally, it's our closest friend, and that Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States, is doing what he can to stem the epidemic of drugs in his country and to stem the epidemic of illegal immigrants moving into his country and the violence that comes with that and the problems from the third world that come with that. And I think we should do the same here in Canada. Now, I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with me, and that's fine. You don't have to agree with me. I could say things that you don't agree with, and you could still like me because, we don't have to agree on everything. But I really believe, strongly believe, that Canadians have to be a strong country. I mean, I don't think we should become the 51st state of the United States, although that probably would be an interesting thing if we did. But I do believe that we have to look into illegal immigration or even legal immigration in this country. We have to figure out how to stem the hatred coming from countries that we're importing people from. For example, in Quebec, we see this hatred every single day. As Jews, we see this hatred every single day. Just last night, just less than 24 hours ago, another Jewish institution, Temple Emmanuel in Westmount, got vandalized. There was a swastika drawn on his door. That was just last night. So we really got to look out and see what we're bringing in and understand that when we import hatred, hatred comes to our country. Now, you can feel free to call in 1-877-669-1292, 1-877-669-1292. The lines are now open, so feel free to call in, and I will be more than happy to take you and put you on the air, and we could talk about this. But I really believe that if we stopped importing people who hated Jews into this country, then Jew hatred in this country would probably drop. I mean, it's always existed in this country, let's be honest. It's existed forever. But it's never been as prevalent as it is in the last little while, at least not for a long, long time. I remember back in the 1990s, in the early 1990s, there was also a rash of Jew hatred that sprung up out of nowhere. And dozens of synagogues were desecrated, and Jews were being beaten in the streets. And in the 90s, I was a young guy at the time, and I got up and I said, look, I'm tired of this. I'm a young guy. I'm tired of this. I don't want this to happen in my country. And so I opened with a friend of mine, we opened an organization called Save All Jews Everywhere. Now, there are other people in the world who are trying to take credit for founding that organization, but the truth is that I founded it with another guy. And one of the first things we did was we had a march against anti-Semitism in Canada. At the time we called it anti-Semitism, now I'm calling it anti-Jewism. But at the time I called it anti-Semitism, a march against anti-Semitism in Canada. And that march was in January of 1991, so that's how long ago we're talking, or 1992, somewhere back then. And what happened was, after that march, we started commenting on all the Jew hatred that was happening. So a synagogue would get desecrated, we'd comment on it. And then we'd be condemned by the Jewish community for commenting on it. Because nobody was allowed to speak on behalf of the Jewish community unless they were the official Jewish community, Federation of CJA or B'nai B'rith. And we didn't care. We were young. We just did what we had to do. And unfortunately, that kind of activism doesn't exist really today. Maybe a little bit on campus these days, but the kind of activism, the kind of chutzpah that we had to get up and stand up against the man, let's say, doesn't exist today. People are afraid to speak out. People are afraid. Social media has really killed activism because people are afraid of being canceled. I've been doing this show for many, many years online. We've been online for about 8 years now. And before that, we were on the AM radio. And then before that, we were on the internet. Before that, we were on college radio. So we've been doing this show for a long, long time. And in all the years I've been doing this show, I've never been afraid of being canceled. In fact, at the last radio station, the AM radio station we were on, they canceled us 3 or 4 times. They shut the show down. And we kept going because the message that I have and the discussions that I have on this show with you, and when you call in, discussions we have together are important discussions. I don't believe there's any topic in the Jewish community or in any community that we shouldn't talk about. And although I'm told constantly, don't talk about this and don't talk about that, I honestly believe that there is nothing that's off limits to talk about. And I believe that we have to talk about the origins of Jew hatred in this country. We have to understand that Jew hatred is not new in this country, and that we know that it's existed for many years. If you remember, just during the Holocaust, the boat the Exodus left. The boat to St. Louis, not the Exodus. The boat to St. Louis left war-torn Europe, where concentration camps were burning Jews, and came to Cuba, which rejected them. They had agreement to accept them, and then they rejected them. And they came to Canada, and Canada's response to the boat requesting to land in Canada, the official Canadian response to the people on the boat, people who if they were sent back to Europe would surely go to concentration camps and die, was none is too many. That was the official governmental response. Now, how many Jews are you going to take in? None is too many. So as long as we understand where we officially stand in the Canadian government, and of course Justin Trudeau apologized for that 50 years later, 60 or 70 years later, he apologized for that, for the government taking that stand. But then he stood up and he started backing Jew haters. So apology on one hand, backing Jew haters on the other hand, it doesn't make sense to me, but that's what it is. And this is what we have to live with here in Canada. Although we shouldn't be living with this is what we're living with. A government that hates the Jewish people. Now, you may say, wait a second, Howie, how could you say that? Aren't people like Anthony Housefather in that government? Aren't there other Jewish MPs that are part of the Liberal government? And I will answer you, yes, there are. And they are very weak Jews. Now, I like Anthony Housefather, and he's the most prominent of all the Jewish MPs. I like Anthony Housefather as a person. He's a great guy. He's in the wrong party, and his liberal ideals have blinded him to the hatred of his party has towards his people. And no matter how much lip service he wants to give, the end of the day, the government hates the Jews. And the government stands against Israel. And the government stands against the Jewish people. If they didn't stand against the Jewish people, the government would have taken action. They would have pressured the Quebec government to take extreme action against the compound of Jew haters that had assembled at McGill University over the summer. They would have compelled the Quebec government to do something about the attacks on the Jewish community, the consistent and constant attacks on the Jewish community in Quebec. They would have done something aside from lip service to try to protect the Jewish citizenship of Canada, who have been attacked over and over and over again, both in Montreal, in Toronto, and elsewhere in Canada. Montreal and Toronto have the 2 largest Jewish communities, so those 2 get specific mentions. They would have done something to try to quell this. They would have done something to try to stop this. But they've done nothing except for giving some lip service and saying, yeah, we feel you, we understand. Yes, we support you. They don't. Let's be honest. They really don't. I'm not saying that any other government was ever better for the Jewish people, but that's the nature of Canada. Nature of Canada is that if you don't fit into that melting pot, into that mold that Canadians have for themselves, and I couldn't even describe what that would be, you're just not welcome. You're just an outsider. Now, I don't mind being an outsider if people leave me alone. I don't mind being an outsider, living my life as an outsider for the general population of Canada, looked at weirdly by people. It doesn't bother me to be an outsider at all. I don't mind. But just leave me alone and let me do my thing. Attacking my buildings, attacking my people, having protests in the streets, yelling, globalize the Intifada, which means have indiscriminate attacks, physical attacks on the population of the Jewish people. And allowing this to happen in Canada is revolting. And I'm sure, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm sure there's some legal precedent to have this stopped. I believe that there's laws against inciting riots. I believe there's laws against calling for the genocide of a people. Yet for over a year now, since October 7th, Canada has allowed thousands of people to stand in the street and call for the genocide of the Jewish people. And when they call for the globalization of the Intifada, what they're really calling for is the indiscriminate attack on Jews. Now, I don't know why this is such a hard concept for people to accept and a hard concept for people to understand. If we look at what was the Intifada, when they talk about the Intifada, what was the Intifada? There were two of them in Israel. And both Intifadas had the same goal: terrorize the Jewish people from inside, commit terror attacks against the Jews. So what did we see in the Intifadas that happened in Israel, and they were about 10 years apart from each other? What did we see happen in those Intifadas? It's quite simple. Jews were indiscriminately attacked on the streets. Buses were blown up. Schoolyards were shot up. Pizza parlors were blown up with children inside. Now, maybe a lot of people don't know that this happened because the world media doesn't really care when Jews are killed, so it doesn't make mass news. Nobody cares, doesn't make the general news, and never gets on the front page of the paper. So maybe people are honestly ignorant as to what the Intifada was. But a little bit of research, just Google the term Intifada. It means uprising in Arabic. And it means uprising against usurpers. And Jews are the usurpers. And this is what they're calling for when they say globalized Intifada. Kill Jews anywhere they are. Attack them indiscriminately. Commit terror attacks against the Jewish population. This is what they're calling for. And the Canadian government has said nothing. They've done nothing to stop this. And we've been seeing the results of the globalization of the Intifada. We've seen firebombed synagogues. We've seen buildings that have been desecrated. We've seen Jews that have been attacked in the streets. We've seen bullets flying into schools. That is globalizing the Intifada. It's exactly what these people on the street are calling for. And yet the Jewish population is at risk, is completely at risk, at physical risk of harm. And our politicians are sitting on their hands and not doing anything to stem the violence, not doing anything to stem the threat. In fact, they can't even bring themselves to say, we condemn this anti-Semitic act. We condemn this anti-Jewish act. We condemn this attack on the Jewish community. They can't even bring themselves to say that. Anytime they get up to say we condemn this attack on the Jewish community, they always have to throw in, and we also condemn Islamophobia. They have to dump it in there for no reason, because they want to be politically correct. We're not taking a side. What side are you taking when you say I condemn an attack on the Jewish community? You're taking the side against violence? You're taking the side against terrorism? And you don't want to be seen taking the side against terrorism? I don't understand it. I don't understand why one has lumped in with the other. It doesn't make sense to me. You're trying to be politically correct? Well, the political correct thing to do is saying, don't attack innocent people. Don't physically attack innocent people. That would be the politically correct thing to say. That when a synagogue or a temple is desecrated with a Nazi symbol, which is, by the way, a code to commit genocide against the Jews. It's a code for the calling of genocide against the Jews, because the Nazi symbol represents Nazism, which was the ultimate genocidal maniacs that came to kill the Jews. So when you daub a swastika on a temple or on a synagogue or on some Jewish institution, what you are saying is the Nazis didn't finish their job. Let's finish their job for them. This is what you are saying. So I don't understand how, in a supposedly socio-democratic country that we live in, the social democratic country that we live in, I don't understand how in the almost communist country that we live in, they allow divisions in society like this. It doesn't make sense to me. And it doesn't make sense to me that the Jewish population hasn't really risen up and yelled, "Stop, enough." That there are still Jews that are willing to vote for the liberal government, even though the liberals, there's still Jews who want to vote liberal. It makes no sense to me. Even though the liberals are the ones who haven't done anything to protect the Jewish population, even though the liberals are the ones who brought a Nazi, a full-fledged Nazi war criminal, into parliament so they could salute him because he fought against Ukraine during Nazism. Because when the Nazis fought against the Russians, he fought against the Ukrainians. And he was a full-fledged Nazi. Living in Canada, of course. And the Canadian government brought him into parliament, the Liberals brought him into parliament so they could get a standing ovation. But everyone seems to forget about that stuff. Nobody seems to remember how Justin Trudeau decided to seize people's bank accounts and take their dogs away and put their kids in social services because they were protesting his COVID legislations. Nobody seems to remember that. And yet there are still people who want to vote for him. I don't understand it. I just don't get it. If you could explain it to me, give me a call. 1-877-669-1292. It's 1-877-669-1292. So when a guy like Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America, gets up and says, hey, listen, we're going to put tariffs on Canada. And we're going to do that until you stop the drugs from coming into our country and stop illegal immigrants from coming into our country. It shouldn't be too hard for Canada to take care of those problems, since only less than 1% of drugs going into America come through the Canadian border, and almost no illegal immigrants come through Canada. It should be easy for Canada to stem that problem and get rid of this whole tariff thing. But we are dumb. And politicians are dumb, excuse me, but they really are, because they don't even realize that this whole tariff situation is a cover-up, so that nobody's paying attention to what Donald Trump and his people are doing in closing down the Department of Education and closing down USAID, and nobody's paying attention to that because everyone's worried about tariffs. So I will not be boycotting the U.S., and I applaud Donald Trump for doing this. I'm really happy that Donald Trump is the President of the United States. I think the alternative would have been disastrous. At least the economy is going to get better, and things will get a little more straight, a little more honest. The alternative would have been disastrous. Now, you could hate me for saying that, and you could hate me for believing that the Republicans are going to fix the United States, and I really do believe that they will. And I believe the Conservatives will fix Canada. I honestly believe they will. You could hate me for saying that, but if you think deep down inside of yourself, you will believe that it's true. You will honestly see that it's true. 1-877-669-1292 is the number to call. Give me a call. 1-877-669-1292. Get in on the conversation here on the Howie Silberger Show on the True Talk Radio Network. It just boggles my mind, and there was a study a little while back, and the study studied people who had a conservative mindset versus people who had a liberal mindset. They wanted to see if there was a difference in people who thought conservatively and people who thought liberally, and they found that there is a major difference. It's not even upbringing. It's not nature versus nurture. It has nothing to do with that. That there's a psychological wiring difference, the way we're psychologically wired between liberal people and conservative people, which is why that the two can never reconcile. They're always at odds with each other. And while I understand that, I still believe that everybody should have a right to say what they think. And I've always had the show's always been open to various points of view, and I've always invited people onto the show who express a different point of view than I do. And every time I have guests and whenever I bring people on, it's never to showcase one point of view. I always try to get a spectrum of points of view on the show because I believe it's important that we talk about it and talk about it honestly. And you can't talk about an issue honestly if you're only expressing one side of the issue. So if I'm only expressing my opinion on the show, and I don't bring in anybody else's opinions, then that's not an honest conversation. That's just me spouting my point of view. You could call that propaganda. You could call that indoctrination. There's a lot of words you could use to describe what I do on the show if I'm only expressing my point of view. But if people come onto the show and express another point of view, then it becomes dialogue. And that's what we need more of in this country, and that's what we need more of in this world. We need more dialogue. We need more people talking to each other, people expressing ideas instead of shouting at each other and not listening to each other, and instead of hating each other because they support one politician or another politician or one point of view and another point of view, instead of blocking each other on social media, and instead of getting frustrated and saying, I never want to talk to you again, have a conversation. And you see how different both sides are, but how much the same both sides are, how similar both sides are. And it's so true. I've had many friends of mine who don't agree with me politically. I have a lot of friends who don't agree with me politically, both religiously and politically. They don't agree with me. I have very out of the box views on both politics and religion. And a lot of people don't subscribe to my point of view, and that's fine. I'm good with that. And it doesn't stop me from going out to coffee with them or getting together with them or talking to them or having candid conversations even about politics and religion with them, because I understand that they could have a differing point of view and I could have a different point of view, and we could still be friends. We could still talk to each other. Many people can't do that, and that's really the sad point. That's the danger. Well, not the danger. That's the damage that social media has done to humankind. They've taken away the idea of debate. They've taken away the idea of getting along with disagreeing with each other, of human communication, face-to-face communication, using words to describe ideas, using words to describe opinions. It's all disappeared. They ask me a lot. I get to ask this question a lot. Howie, why do you think AM radio is dying across North America? Why do you think it's dying? And people throw out all sorts of ideas. Oh, it's dying because of podcasts, but podcasts is talk radio. It's the same thing. It's dying because of the internet. That's not really true either. It's dying because people have forgotten how to express ideas. I worked for a news talk radio station for 12 years, just about 12 years. And the station I worked for in Montreal, it pretended, and I'll use pretended as a very loosely because they weren't even pretending. It was really just falsified. What they did was they took a topic, whatever political topic it was going to be, and they forced their host to pick a side. But one host was assigned one side, a right wing, and the other host was assigned a left wing point of view. And whether the host agreed with the point of view they were presenting or didn't agree with their point of view, that was the point of view they were ordered to present by the program director. And so they got on, and there were a lot of conversations, a lot of arguments that happened on air between hosts that didn't even believe in what they were talking about. They totally disagreed with what they were arguing. They were just doing it because that was their job. That was what they were assigned to do. That kind of contrived debate really killed real debate. And so people just get angry now. They don't express their opinion. They don't talk about what they feel. They just get angry. And getting angry is not the solution. Getting angry is not the way to solve an issue. It's not the way to resolve an issue. It's not the way to even discuss an issue. I get very angry when I see Hamas releasing political prisoners. I get very angry. Hostages. I get angry at hostages. I get furious at hostages. And knowing that Israel is releasing hundreds of terrorists with blood on their hands for these hostages infuriates me. I don't believe that the hostage deals should be going through. I don't believe that terrorists should be released. And I honestly think that Israel should have kept going and destroyed Hamas, even if it was at the cost of losing the terrorists. That's the way I think. Now, you may disagree with me, and that's fine. Like I said before, you have a right to disagree with me, and that's why I have open lines. So if you want to call in, you can feel free to do that at 1-877-669-1292. So if you disagree with me on anything I say, you could always call and challenge me, and that's why the lines are open, and that's why I'm not afraid to have open lines. I even pay for the call. You see, you could call, and you could insult me, and you could argue with me, and I'll even pay for the call, because that's how much I believe that we should be discussing these issues, and we should be discussing them in an open and honest manner. I've, for years, I've encouraged people to call in and argue with me, and that's fine. If they choose not to, that's fine too. It doesn't bother me. And the reason it doesn't bother me is because what usually happens is somebody will run into me in a supermarket and say, hey, I saw your show the other night, or I listened to your show, and I totally disagreed with what you said. And I would look at them and say, what do you mean you disagreed with me? If you disagreed with me, you could have picked up the phone and called me. I'm not getting into an argument with you, or I'm not getting into debate with you on a topic I talked about 4 days ago in the supermarket. If you want to talk to me and you disagree with something I'm saying at the moment, call in. Why would you wait 4 days and run into me in a supermarket and want to have an argument with me in the supermarket when you could have just called and had an argument with me on the show while we were talking about that? So you see, that's why I have open lines. But many shows, people don't take advantage of the open lines, and that's fine. It doesn't bother me in the least bit because, we live in a free world. At least we thought it was a free world. We thought we lived in freedom, but we really don't. And the truth is that the more free that we think we are, the less free we are. Think about it for a second. Just sit back and think for a second about freedom. What does freedom mean to you? Freedom to me means living my life freely, being able to do what I want to do, being able to work in the profession I want to work in, being able to raise my family the way I want to raise my family. That is freedom to me. But we don't live in that kind of society. In fact, the entire world society has changed. Freedom doesn't exist anymore. So many people are afraid to express themselves because social media has killed them. It's so easy to say the wrong thing and then be canceled forever. And I'm hoping, and it looks like the tide's turning on that, and I really hope that the tide turns on that, because it is ridiculous to have to watch your words, every single thing that you say. You see, I'm on the internet right now, and this show only broadcasts on the internet. We used to broadcast on AM, and now we're only broadcasting on the internet. So really, right now on this show, I could say pretty much anything I want. It's unregulated, so I could say anything I want. I could use any language I want to use, and nobody will even bother me. I mean, maybe some people listening might get offended by some of the language I could use. Maybe some people who listen with their children might say, hey, that's not language for children. But I don't use that language, and intentionally don't use that language, because I feel that in order to communicate a message from me to you and from you, and for you to communicate your message to me, we have to use civilized discourse. We have to talk like normal human beings. We have to discuss things on a rational, normal basis. And if I choose to use vulgar language to talk about things, it kind of deflates the point I'm trying to make. It deflates the argument I'm making. For instance, if you take a look at the bottom of the screen, if you're watching this on social media, and you take a look at the bottom of the screen, I have it listed: YouTube, X, TikTok, Facebook, and there's ways to communicate with me on all those platforms, and ways to watch the show on all those platforms, with the exception of TikTok. I have to erase that. I have to take that out from the banner. The reason I have to take it out from the banner is because TikTok banned me. So why did TikTok ban me? They banned my channel. They closed my channel down and banned me. Why did they close my channel down and ban me? Well, it's quite simple. They got enough complaints. There were people complaining enough that they took it off. So what were the people complaining about? Why ban somebody for expressing an opinion? And it was only clips of the show. It wasn't even the whole show. It was just clips of the show. And they banned me. So what was the point of them banning me? And the idea was that I was expressing a pro-Israel point of view. And because I was expressing a pro-Israel point of view, the Arabs on TikTok, the Jew haters on TikTok, decided that I was not worthy enough to have a TikTok channel. And so they complained to TikTok that I was a racist. And what racist things did I say? How racist was I? I said that I don't believe that the Israeli government should be negotiating with terrorists. I said that terrorists are attacking the Jewish community right across North America. I said that the people protesting in favor of Hamas and the people supporting Hamas should be arrested and should be tried for terrorism. This is what I said. And because I said that on TikTok, and because I used the word like murder or suicide or killing, I was banned from the platform. They erased my channel and took me off the platform. Now, I don't care. It really doesn't bother me that I'm not on TikTok. I couldn't care less. But the truth is that social media should exist to have conversations. And if you disagree with somebody on social media or a show like this one, that's fine. You have a right to disagree. You could comment on it. That's what the comment sections are for. And so using the comment sections, you could express your point of view. Having somebody banned off a network or a network banning somebody doesn't make sense to me because that's called censorship. And that's something censorship just doesn't sit well with me. I don't believe in censoring people. And you may be looking at me and saying, "What are you, crazy, Howie? What are you saying? You don't believe in censoring people?" In all the years I have been on this show, in all the years we've been doing this show, I have never called once, not once, for the cancellation or the boycott of anybody who expressed an opinion. I've called for re-educating people. I've called for having a debate and discussing the issue with people I disagree with. But I've never called for the shutting down or the erasing of somebody's opinion. Even the most vile, disgusting opinions, I've never called for the erasure of. I remember years ago, I got a call from a regular caller who said to me, "You know, Howie, there's on the Plateau Mount Royal, there's a store that sells Hitler T-shirts." I said, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah. Yeah, in their storefront, they have a big swastika, and then there's T-shirts, like novelty T-shirts featuring Hitler. Shirts that have Hitler sitting on the beach and shirts that have Hitler walking down the street. And these ridiculously stupid tourist attraction shirts, but all of them featuring Hitler." He says, "Aren't you going to do something? Do you want to go protest? Are you going to start yelling for the shutdown of the store?" And I remember clearly saying, no, not at all. A swastika, and even when they daub swastika, I'm more upset, by the way, with them defacing a Jewish building, not by what the graffiti is. If they write "kill Jews" or swastika, I don't care what it says. The idea of defacing the house of God or house of learning is more hurtful to me than the actual message. Because the message doesn't really matter to me. Some spray paint is not going to hurt me. Sticks and stones will break my bones, right? Spray paint's not going to hurt me. But the idea that someone disrespects the religion, disrespects me, and disrespects God enough to go and desecrate a house of God, it makes me sad. It makes me angry. It makes me angry that society has degraded to a point where attacking houses of worship is acceptable behavior. Where protesting and yelling death to the Jews in front of houses of worships is acceptable behavior. And in Australia, where burning down houses of worship with Jews inside it is acceptable behavior. and people think that this is okay. That hurts me more and that bothers me more than the actual defiling of the buildings. Because the defiling of the buildings, a power washer will take off the spray paint. Who cares? I couldn't care less what a Jew hater thinks of me. I know what Jew haters think of me. So I don't care what they have to say. It's irrelevant to me when a guy gets up and gives an anti-Jewish speech. It doesn't bother me. I couldn't care less. Because if he's not giving it in public, he's giving it in private. So stopping him from speaking in public is just encouraging him to speak in private. So what's the difference? I'd rather hear what he has to say rather than find out later, after my synagogues are burned down and after my houses are burned down and after my people are destroyed and killed, and finding out later that this is the guy who instigated the whole thing. I prefer him to do it in public. Just get up in public and say, hey, look, we got to go and kill the Jews. At least we know what we're dealing with and we understand who is pushing people to do this. By pushing them into the corner, pushing them into the dark, pushing them into the dark corners of the room, we are not seeing who is in charge here. You're encouraging people to go and to clandestinely call for the death of Jews. You know they're going to do it anyway. So you might as well hear them do it, see what they're doing, understand what direction they're going in. At least that's the way I see it. I know the Jewish community, the official Jewish community, the mainstream Jewish community, as they like to call themselves, disagree with me. And that's fine. You have the right to disagree with me. Once again, we live in a free world. You have the right to disagree with me or agree with me. You also have the right to call in, 1-877-669-1292. But I really believe, and I'm being honest here, I'm being 100% honest, I honestly believe that we should have the freedom to speak. I don't believe there should be any limits on freedom of speech. If people want to express vile hatred towards anybody, that's fine. Let them hang themselves. Let them show how horrible they are. And of course, you'll have the minimal people, the scum of the earth, who agree with them. But they're going to do it in private anyway. So what's the difference? I'm Howie Silberger. This is the Howie Silberger Show. We're heard on the True Talk Radio Network. I'll be back again tomorrow with Political Hitman, which is heard on Israel News Talk Radio. And I hope that you can dig yourself out of the snow. I hope that you stay safe. And I'll see you again tomorrow, right here on the True Talk Radio Network. Have a good one.